Hey, my name is Anthony Sellers, and this is my Week 5 close reading for my Jonah class. And today we're going to be looking at Jonah chapter 3, the entire chapter. I'm going to read it real quick out of the New King James. It says, "Now the word of the Lord came to Jonah the second time, saying, Arise and go to Nineveh, the great city, and preach to it the message that I tell you. So Jonah arose and went to Nineveh according to the word of the Lord. Now Nineveh was an exceedingly great city, a 3-day journey in extent. And Jonah began to enter the city on the first day's walk. Then he cried out and said, Yet 40 days, and Nineveh shall be overthrown. So the people of Nineveh believed God, proclaimed a fast, and put on the sackcloth, from the greatest to the least of them. Then the word came to the king of Nineveh, and he rose from his throne, laid aside his robe, covered himself with sackcloth, and sat in ashes. And he caused it to be proclaimed and published throughout Nineveh by the decree of the king and his nobles, saying, Let neither man nor beast, herd nor flock, taste anything. Do not let them eat or drink water. But let the man and beast be covered with sackcloth, and cry mightily to God. Yes, let everyone turn from his evil way and from the violence that's in his hands. Who can tell if God will turn and relent and turn away from his fierce anger, so that we may not perish? Then God saw their works, that they turned from their evil way, and God relented from the disaster that he had said he would bring upon them, and he did not do it." So one of the main things that we'll start off with is the literary markers, and I just think there's a few, maybe 2 or 3 really major ones. The first one is we get in the first verse. In the very first verse, we see a retelling of the original chapter of Jonah. Now it's almost out of chapter 2, we got this new birth of Jonah, where he spends 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the huge fish, and now we've got this new birth in him. And so it's almost like God give him this redo and just starts completely over and allows him to make that choice again, which is important, I think, for this story, and we can look at that later. But the next literary marker from this point is when it says, So Jonah arose and went to Nineveh. Now we get this context in the first literary marker where it says, Now the word of the Lord came to Jonah. And then Jonah's response. So Jonah gets up and goes. But the next literary marker, I think, sets the tone for the whole chapter. And that it falls into the sense, it says, So the people, in verse 5, the people of Nineveh believed God and proclaimed a fast and put on the sackcloth from the greatest to the least of them. So like we just have this whole change in dynamic, which is really setting the tone even for the application for this. That Jonah has gone and preached the message, and they listened and they obeyed. They just believed God and began to work on it. In the next literary marker, it says that the word, in verse 6, then the word came to the king of Nineveh, and he arose. So now we've got this other tone setting. Now not only are the people listening to Jonah, now the king has got involved in this. And the king has declared that not even the animals can eat. Like, this is a serious fast. And so it sets up this whole dynamic of Jonah's obedience. And then the final literary marker for me was verse 10. It says, Then God saw their works, and they turned from their evil way, and God relented from the disaster. So we've got these 4 main literary markers that stand out. Now the word of the Lord came to Jonah. Then Jonah got up and went. Then the people believed. Then the king believed and decreed. And I think these are the 4 major sections of this chapter. In summary, this chapter really is simple in nature and doesn't have much interpretation needed. It's real simple. Jonah got a second chance, a redo, a mulligan if you're a golf person. He got to restart from the very start. He got to rewind and restart. And God gave him the same word to go to Nineveh. And he gets up and he goes and he walks in and he says, God's going to destroy this place in 40 days. And it was like this amazing thing that I think really almost, I don't know if it took Jonah off guard or not. Maybe his experience with the fish, remember, opened his eyes to God. But the simplicity, he just goes in there and says, you guys are about to be punished. It's about to be over. And the people just believe. Everyone just believes. That's it. And even the king removes his kingly garment, puts on a sackcloth, which lowers himself, and kings do not lower themselves. But he puts on this sackcloth and he lowers himself and declares this fast. And because of that, it's so simple in nature, because of Jonah's obedience, the whole place was saved. And it even went into the king's throne room, and the king bowed before Christ, before God. So, the next thing that we should talk about is, what does that mean? What does this mean to the readers? It's simple. It's really a simple interpretation, is that if you will be obedient to God's calling, then how do you know He's not already went before you and declared, or went before you and prepared the hearts of the people? And so we have to understand that God's not calling us to figure it out. God is calling us just to be obedient. And that's what we see here with Jonah chapter 3. In our obedience, God is able to work. Which leads me to the final thing in the application, which again, in my mind, is a simple application, is that there are areas in our life that we have to learn just to be obedient in. In our finances with tithing, or in our be obedient in serving with churches, or maybe we're supposed to help that one person that we don't like, or maybe we're supposed to contact that one person that we just don't like, or the list goes on and on. There's things in our life that seem uncomfortable, but if God is calling us to it, even though we maybe feel like it's impossible, even though maybe we feel like it's useless even, if God's calling us, we have to understand that He is already there preparing the hearts and preparing it. He just needs an obedient vessel. Thank you guys. Hope you have an awesome day.